My name is Joey. I'm joined by Imogen
Hi, Joey.
and by Neil.
Hello.
Um, moments of the week. Neil, would you like to? Do you know what? I'm going to break with tradition, and I'm going to start us off this week.
Go
Normally,
on.
it's I either forget. Normally, I either forget or whatever. I would say the club being bought by local businessman Doug King.
Oh, niche.
Maverick.
Imogen, what would you go for?
I hadn't even thought about that one. I was going to say something about Hamus passing, but yeah, if you want to start with that, we can do.
Look,
Oh
right.
man, I have one, and it's
Lo-
not that. And I'm really annoyed.
Go on, Neil. What, for the sake of completion, before we talk about local businessman Doug King.
I know it's pretty annoying though, because this is like almost being the dream week. You know, we've been bought out now, so that's great news. But James Maddison made the England squad. Like
Yeah.
this is what I've been praying for my entire life, or his life maybe. This is great, and now he's been usurped on this podcast by us being bought out and being saved from all our debt. How dare they?
Did you see the that very handsome squad photo, Neil?
Yes, I did. I've seen pretty much every single bit of content they've sent out so far. So yeah.
I thought that was not a bad little thing. I don't know whether I'm reading too much into it, or whether generally people are. But that is an Ashley Cole reference, isn't it?
I think it's got to be. It's too good not to. I mean,
It is almost identical, isn't it?
Yeah. Fair play.
Wait,
I've
I've missed
Gareth
this.
knows.
I was only looking
Oh,
at Callum Wilson pictures. What are we looking at?
Have you seen, Imogen, I take it, are you aware of that Roma squad photo that Ashley
Yes.
Cole is on the periphery of years ago? There's a
Yes.
photo that I imagine Neil can hastily find for you. I might be able to send it to you while we're talking. That seems to be Maddison sort of poking fun at himself by being the Ashley Cole in that situation.
Such a card.
It's very well done. Very well done. I just wonder whether Gareth knew about that. I thought that was a bit much, really. You can't. I want him to be on his best behaviour this entire trip. Like, no messing around, just be the perfect student. And he's already been a bit of a maniac by having a laugh.
Yeah.
Madman.
Anyway, speaking of madmen, what about local businessman Doug King? It's absolute lunatic. I think a figure that will be familiar to all of us, having been in the news a lot and been linked with the club consistently over the last 10 years. Not a surprise to anyone, I don't think, that local businessman Doug King has bought the club. I did have to check it first. I did have to check it first because I thought I'd recognised his name. I didn't know whether it was that guy that was the poker player.
I was thinking of the boxer promoter that you all mentioned.
Donkey.
Yeah, I got very confused. And then I thought I was very worried that it was like a massive joke on me and it was joking and all that sort of stuff. And I just didn't know where to go with it.
But that was the other thing.
Could still be.
The first thing that I had to check is with all of the hijinks on Twitter recently is now coming from a verified account is no longer the credible source of information that it once was. So,
literally, you've been going through everything, yeah.
Yeah, is Don King dead?
No, I don't think he is. I did search him earlier when I was doing my research for this pod.
Yeah, you're right. Still alive. So it's not. It could be him still. It could be a misprint by the club.
I mean, he's probably got the money, hasn't he?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we've started talking about it. So I guess we don't know anything, as with everything that we talk about, we don't know anything more than anybody else, do we? However, the big problem for me with the idea of Ashley or somebody else doing it is I don't think there would have been any desire for him or for any number of people to have reunited the ground with the club. I think what you'd have been looking at there is if he'd have bought the ground and bought the club, what he would have bought was two separate business entities who happened to have a relationship, but he wouldn't have been looking for one to profit the other. He'd have been looking for both to profit him, wouldn't he?
It's like risk preservation, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think that the thing is that he wouldn't have bought both businesses and merged them, would he? Because then, do you know what I mean? One offsets the losses of the other, whereas actually you get the impression that he would have done it because it would have made sense from a sort of business point of view to be in control of both assets, but that they wouldn't have been shoved together in the way that local businessman Doug King seems to be planning to. The other thing is that the club statement seems to say, yeah, next up is a bid for the ground. And we talked about this very briefly before we started recording. But what is it to be a preferred bidder then? Because we were all led to believe that what on earth, I guess.
I mean, did he pay money to be preferred bidder? Doesn't there talk about him paying money to kind of
that was what
get
was
preferential treatment or whatever? I don't know. We're already in the realms of us talking about nonsense, but something like that must have happened. So it's like looking at the club statement, it seems pretty confident that this is all big, all-encompassing news, and
it's a big call to make, isn't it? To announce a new owner, but then to just like very nonchalantly drop in. Don't even worry about the ground, guys, because we basically have already done. That's very much sorted.
That'll sort itself.
Like, what? Is it sorted, or because I just think either you'd have to be really insane, or like you just wouldn't mention it, would you? Unless you were actually pretty far down the line with that, surely.
Or replay, obviously,
Yeah.
There's some
it's
sort
the
of
eve of
reason
the
for
hearing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all very interesting. That's what I'd say.
And you've seen all that stuff now. I mean, immediately people start raiding company's house and looking at all the information about. And there is definitely some sort of pre-existing connection between this chap and his company and his brother and Sisu and all this sort of stuff. So that's gonna. Some people are going to do a lot of digging over the next day or two, aren't they? So I'm sure more information will come about exactly what this relationship looks like. Because am I right? Sisu retain an element of ownership. Is that right?
So again,
they've got 15%, haven't they?
15,
so all we can do is read into the thing. The last not that I've sort of hyper-analysed it, but the last paragraph says we're looking forward to working together, talking about Sisu. But then it's also murky as to who owns what already, isn't it? So, friend of the podcast and regular guest on here, CJ, and I swapped some messages before we started. He was under the impression that Fisher still had some stake in the club, and of course Fisher is often sort of conflated with Sisu, despite the fact that they're not the same. And Brody.
Oh,
so
Brody,
yeah.
still.
So there was it. So there's like it's there's 15% not owned by local businessman Doug King, but who actually owns that 15%? It seems is Sisu. So I don't know whether that means that Fisher sold his stake or whether he had a stake in the first place. Again, what you're listening to today is speculation cast. I think the more we talk, the more I realise we should just shut up and talk about the stuff that we still don't know about, but that we do know more about than kind of like business. But yeah, you are right. There's absolutely no two ways about it. It is good. And we can
I didn't mean that. I mean, us talking about it is the sense
just having a great chat.
Yeah, just having a jolly good chat with each other because it doesn't matter. I mean, but I think I'm always worried about upsetting everybody and anyone. And I was like, I don't want to be too negative about this great new news because everybody's going to be, it's great news. But it's all right for us having gone through what we've gone through to ask a few questions. Just that seems a bit interesting. Let's ask those questions because we're not entirely stupid, are we?
No, and there's no indication that it has actually been confirmed, is there? I mean, even the statement on the website, it's subject to
subject approval. All right.
Yeah.
Imagine if he fails the fit and proper birth test.
All that rape.
It's a famously high bar to climb.
I assume we assume he's okay, and they're like, yeah, we can't go into detail, but this is a really bad dude. The EFL are like, we checked this guy out, and this is like what he's doing with rapeseed oil, which is what I looked on the Yellow Enterprises website, and seems to be one of their big stock in trade. They'll be like, this is a bad rapeseed oil guy. We're not.
Yeah. The regular oil from Saudi Arabia. Good guys.
This is no. All I'll say is, if you're thinking about going into business with this particular local businessman, you better think again. Yeah. So I think
Doug King.
I don't know. Don't know what approval we're going to need from the EFL. Well, saying that the EFL seem to have been an entity almost entirely set up to fuck us up over the last 10 years or so, haven't they? So I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, "What are you thinking of doing?" Nah.
Long-term future, get out of it.
Nah. But now, while there's a World Cup on, no, you have to wait till when we're back at our desks. Right, okay. Yeah, but like you say, it's good. What will be interesting as well is that, as everyone knows, we have been in the pay of Sisu for quite some time. So I don't know whether now our shares have been bought, whether we're due some sort of dividend, but more importantly is, do we now serve as a mouthpiece for local businessman Doug King and his business ventures, shady and murky as they obviously are, or what happens? Who do we shill ourselves to? The council, or I guess, as always, it's our listeners that will tell us who we are representing at any one time. So do feel free to write in to tell us who we are being paid off by this.
Mike Ashley,
yeah. Sports director mugs are available. Right, okay, so let's try and do now. Full disclosure on this. We're going to not attempt to look at the admittedly quite fantastic results that we've had recently since we last podcasted, and instead do a sort of bastardised version of a kind of mid-season review. So let's start off by saying, for both of you, in a sentence, how has your season been? Imogen, why don't you start us off?
Some parts good, some parts bad. In reverse.
Yes.
That's a sentence. Did you want me to go further?
No, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Neil, what would you say in a sentence?
It has been a growing period of loveliness. It's getting better all the time.
You sounded like you were trying to do it without including the letter, like when Lenny does it in The Simpsons, where he says, "Why should you keep your job without you?" It was good.
I thought I gave an excellent sentence.
I tell you what, we did moments of the week, and obviously that's very obscured by the fact that we've been bought out by local businessman Doug King. Why don't we do moments of the half season so far? So, what have been standout good and bad moments off the top of your head? Neil, why don't you start us off with some classics?
Yeah, some classics. I mean, the resurgence of Gus Hamer since his couple of sendings off is just found a new way of being even better than he was before, without tripping everybody up all the time, which is, for me, an absolute perfect combo. I love the tripping up. It's great. But if I'm gonna offset that with he's now playing the best football he's played for us, like I'll take that. It's fine. The tripping up can just happen occasionally. You can still do it. I don't mind it, but just not all the time. So yeah, that's for one of it. I think that has culminated in this version of the team that we've got at the moment, where he is. Jock is obviously the beast up front, and he's very difficult to look beyond. But Hamer, there's something about him right now where he's believing he is one of the best players in the league, and he's kind of showing it. It's very good.
What do you think is an acceptable price, Neil, that you would accept for Hamer this summer? If you're local business,
I'm local
King
business.
right now.
What are you accepting? Okay, yeah. I did the maths on this. I think I'm going to say it, and I don't care for once in a while. I think he's £15 million as well. Just if he continues to play like this, and if we finish like top 6 or something mad like that, and he's behind it, he's that level. And how old is he? He's still quite young, isn't he?
He's 24.
Mid 24, 25, something like that.
He's
so
baby.
That's if he's worth that, and now McFadden's saying that Gyökeres is worth 30, which it seems unlikely, but we'll take that as our new benchmark. I mean, influencing the team, they do different things, but he's worth big money. And my biggest thing here is we saw this with O'Hare. When they're not in the team, even if there are things that you don't like about them, or things they could do better, when they're not in the team, we are just a different beast. And with each of those players, we would have to find a new way, and I just don't know how you find a new way without being compensated properly.
Gus was 25 in the summer.
Was he really?
Practically over the hill, yeah. I don't think I don't know about you, Imogen. I don't think £15 million is that mad.
No,
Not anymore.
I think he's pivotal to our team, isn't he? And him coming back in, that, like Neil said, the resurgence that we've seen in the results is absolutely to do with his increased energy and concentration levels. Oh, some of the passes have just delicious. He's been so focused, and his defensive play, I think, has been really good as well. And I don't think we would be able to replace that easily. Gyökeres is the obvious target in the transfer window, but I'd be so upset if we lost Hamer. I'm almost resigned to losing Gyökeres now, but I'd be really sucker punched if we lost Hamer.
Would you be more if you could keep one of the two of them? Who would you keep for you first, Imogen?
It's so hard to look past Gyökeres' goals. I prefer to keep Gyökeres, but I love Hamer. He's great.
I mean, I obviously adore Hamer, but we'll come on to you in a second, Neil. But the thing with Gyökeres is that, like, and I know I've said it a million times, our entire existence is based on just being able to kick it big to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hamer is absolutely outstanding, and I think increasingly, and I'm going to go big on this, I don't think Ben Sheaf is that far away from entering that echelon of player for us. I think it's the mixture of Hamer and Sheaf.
Yeah.
That's where, in the same way as people are saying, why on earth have Trent and Van Dijk for Liverpool dropped off in terms of their defensive ability this season, whereas I think actually they haven't. They've just become more exposed by their midfield. I think I don't think our defence is amazing, is it? I think what's happened is that Sheaf and Hamer are almost impenetrable in front of them, and that they just stop so much getting through. And then we're defending so high up the pitch and winning the ball back so high up the pitch with so many good dynamic players, is like the pair of them have been absolutely ludicrous. But ultimately, like, we can afford to have so many players shielding the goal because we've got what one man attacking plan of, as long as the ball lands somewhere near Gyökeres, there's always a chance. There's always a chance that he can head it up into the air, control it, and then run 80 yards in the 94th minute to score a goal. Like, there's not. I don't think there's many players when they come to, like, a few people have asked us whether us being bought out is going to mean that we're the new Brentford or Brighton, and their big thing is sort of like attracting, unheard of attacking talent. But I do like the idea of our recruitment department being like, yeah, we've got our wish list here for one player. Yeah, he needs to also be 6'2". He needs to also he needs to be able to run 100 meters in 8 seconds. He needs to be able to, like,
do
lift.
that for 96 minutes every game. Yeah.
While getting kicked over and over again because he's the only player in their half. They'll be like, yeah, we might struggle with this one. Sorry, anyway, Neil, I interrupted you. Hamer or Gyökeres?
No, I definitely take your point in terms of it's just the impact that if you remove one of them from the team, it's the impact that they leave when they're not there. And you can do something differently for Hamer. We found a way this season to get points when he's not around. But Gyökeres, like you say, it's a different thing entirely. The out ball that he gives you away from home, specifically, where you're under pressure and you can just send it down the line and he will find a way to turn that into a chance. I mean, that isn't something you replace. What happens is if we lose him, we have to find a new way of doing things. And it's become more stark this season because we've had periods where O'Hare hasn't been in for a long time and Hamer hasn't been in for a long time, and you kind of just see the difference in dynamic when those players aren't in the team. And there's nothing to say that you can't find a way, but when they're all in the same team at the same time, the way that we've got is just very, very good. And if we can keep them fit and in the team for the whole season at least, we've got a chance of doing something, I think.
Do you know what's quite funny to imagine, although not that funny, is that Gyökeres gets sold in January, and for whatever reason we don't replace him, and so we try and do exactly the same thing with just Tyler Walker up front.
It's not funny, Joe.
Mark is like, now Tyler, listen.
Right. So, can you run? Yeah. Can you hit? Are you strong? Yeah.
Showing him Jokeres videos and being like, you see what he's done here?
Well, he's done something different there, hasn't he? He's done two things at the same time.
Yeah. I want you to do this largely. Are you ready? I've bought you some big shin pads.
Oh, man.
There we go. Right, okay. So, good things. The re-emergence of Gus Hamer. Imogen, good things that we've seen from this season. What else can we think of?
The continued Renaissance man that is Carl McFadden. What a boy.
I mean, let's somebody, some wag on Twitter said earlier when I was asking for questions, with the sort of continued dominance of Carl McFadden, how good at 36, how good do you think he'll be by the time he gets to 40? I said, well, sorry, I've done a real disservice to that. It was, if he's getting better and better by the age of 36, how good is he going to be by the age of 40? But yeah,
That's
go on.
definitely how it works. Yeah.
Talk to me about your McFadden love, because I think it's very well justified, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the first season or two that he was with us, and he was a danger to society. He just had nothing about him. He was slow and ponderous and had
Wacky.
no idea where the ball was going and just got sent off. He scored a few own goals, and I don't really understand how this has happened, how he has become such an important part of our team, but I think he is. I have to say that for all the attacking brilliance that we saw in the QPR game, which I think was probably the best that we've played this season, his mazy run at about 70 minutes was the best thing about the entire day. I just kept looking around going, did you see that? Did you see what he did?
The thing is, he will pop up there occasionally, won't he? He's not afraid of.
No,
he's got Gary McSheffrey's brain, where it's like like he's waiting for the world to realise what a brilliant footballer he is.
They must all know
that.
He's
Mark on the touchline mustering, going, he's got no right to be there. Why is he there? Get back.
Definitely furious.
Yeah, raging.
Why has he?
Did you see that?
No, go on.
Well, I've just never seen Jokeres so keen or eager to give the ball to somebody as he was when McFadden was there. He was literally head up, I've got to give you this ball. It's like that when you're playing FIFA and you just want to score with James Maddison for England, and you just, you desperately pass it to him in the last minute. I don't know where that reference comes from because I don't play FIFA, but yeah.
No, but that is it. But you're right. There would be. I can think of instances where that would be applicable. But even like you say, Jokeres would be, even as selfish as he is, he'd be like, "Oh, this would be too funny if he scores."
Gotta do it. Yeah.
Has anyone noticed that there seems to be like a sort of like the videos that I really like in the summer of the players sort of talking about like the kind of the best dressed and whatever else. In this summer particularly, there seemed to be like a real antipathy towards Jokeres, a sort of eye-rolling tendency, and that now seems to have shifted to sort of like begrudging acceptance that they're nothing without him. There's been a couple of things in the Telegraph of people being quoted who are like, nah, he's a character, but we do have to keep him at all costs. Our entire existence depends on him being around. So he's a good guy. We've got on that since he's become the Championship's top scorer and arguably best player.
We kind of like him now.
He's an all right guy, actually. It just makes you think of.
Go on. I was going to say, Robbins said in his post match, he said something like, "Yeah, he likes scoring goals. He doesn't really like much else, but he likes scoring goals." Christ, the combination of Mark and Jokeres is the most joyless pair you've ever seen.
Yeah.
The fact that Mark has noticed it as well, that's just mad. I mean, of all the people to question your personality, like most miserable man in history.
The for the listeners is what's it is it's worth sharing a bit of intel that I got that I don't think it'll be news to anybody, but it is lovely to hear it backed up. Is I spoke to Richard Sutcliffe, who's a journalist in Yorkshire who'd covered Barnsley and Huddersfield while Robbins was there. He told me that he had interviewed Robbins for pre and post match stuff as part of the sort of for while he was there, and he said, even more so in person when you're a journalist, you realise how little respect or how little time he's got to do any interviews. Just says you get some people who really relish it, some people who sort of are like very professional about it, and then some people like Robbins who just turn up and they're just like, keep this brief. Just, he was like, yeah, he was always really difficult.
Yeah, I definitely believe that.
That's our mark.
When he does the post-match, so all the players, they're interviewed and they're sort of nearly fully facing the camera, and Robbins is just side profile.
Yeah.
You can barely see his face, and he's constantly
looks like he's got his hands in his pockets.
Rubbing his head, or his hands are obscuring his face. He doesn't want to be there.
No, not at all. Which is, I think, is quite refreshing. Because I do think that there's a sort of celebrity element to being a manager now, which I just think he doesn't relish at all, does he?
It's just what we needed.
Yeah. You wonder what the likelihood of him sort of ever leaving of his own volition. You'd have to wonder what would attract him now away from the club. Because it must be, like, if you were, let's say QPR, someone who ostensibly would seem closer to the Premiership than we might be. I know not this season necessarily, albeit that they're doing well, but they're sort of in the grand scheme of things, probably you've got a better chance, generally speaking, against the Premiership. It wouldn't be that, would it?
You know what it might be though, and because I'm starting to see Norwich fans talking about getting rid of Dean Smith, and
really?
They want Mark, and I don't know how much of affinity he has with them from back in the day, but you imagine he's got some, and that could be the one, because they just seem to steal everything from us, don't they? So
I also don't
know.
Worry,
that's the worrying one I had. Yeah.
I also don't know if you were like, he's really unsexy, isn't he? And I don't mean.
Oh, I disagree.
I don't mean physically speaking. I mean kind of as a prospect. Even as brilliant as a job as he's done, it's a really unsexy job, isn't it? Like, if you're Eddie Howe taking Bournemouth from League Two to the Premier League, he's like, 20 years old, and he's got that weird sort of Play-Doh face. He's like the young up-and-comer, isn't he? But that Robbins, like mid-50s or whatever, curmudgeonly kind of... His mum would struggle to pick him out of a lineup. And that he kind of... It hasn't been like a meteoric rise for us, has it? We've kind of just sort of nudged our way back up the... Yeah, he's not...
Almost on purpose. It's
stay out with
I
the
don't
limelight,
want any distractions. What happened with me at Huddersfield? I'm not letting that happen again. I had to move and everything, and then they only kept me for 6 months. Staying here.
He's like, quick, there's no fans here. Let's finish top. There's no one will notice. So I don't know. It's hard to imagine who would want him sufficiently above anyone else, and how tempting it would have to be to discourage him. Because if I was him, at what point do you go, I reckon I could get these to the Premier League, and then that is a fucking no one will ever do a managerial job as good as that.
Yeah, that's statue, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's statue now. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we've still got like the third lowest budget in the Championship, and we could be fourth if we win our games in hand. He could finish. He could get relegated this season. I'd still say he's statue worthy. But if he got us to the Premier League, I don't know whether. Could we give him virgins? What do you do at that point?
The Mark Arena. That's what I want. Just for all the time.
Yeah, I think the Mark Arena is a lovely bit of business. I would like to chuck in something that I have become increasingly happy about, and I would say possibly irrationally so, but it's not going to stop me from going head over heels. I really love Casey Palmer.
Nice.
because I think he was missold to us, possibly by us, because we make our own narratives up in our head. I was convinced he was going to come in and be good for like 3 games, but that like, you know, better than anyone you've ever seen, and then like get injured or be flighty or like sort of wander through games in the way that Frank Musa used to or whatever. And instead, the more consistently he's played, the more he's like a super Jim O'Brien. He's everything that I want him to be. In fact, he's not a super Jim O'Brien. And I'll let people crucify me for saying this. He's like a Callum O'Hare that can pass.
He's an option. No, I can't believe how good he is at tackling. Like,
I know.
Good.
Yeah, he's great.
Ridiculously good at tackling. I mean, and it's such a weapon to have. And I'm going to make this point on this podcast. I've made it once in a tweet, but I absolutely maintain the validity of and the absolute brilliance of him being a sub sometimes. And it's not the worst thing in the world.
No.
He's so useful to come on as a sub when he's fit and energetic and they're tired. It's so much more of an impact on the team than if he starts when he's fit and everybody else is fit, and the first half just kind of jumbles together sometimes. Where him in the last 20 minutes is my perfect sub. He just brings everything I want. He's so good.
Yeah, those tackles were like. Do you remember the Portsmouth game when Dabo and Castanier both got sent off?
Yes.
It's like those tackles, but successful ones.
Yeah,
It's brilliant
every time. Yeah.
There's two of my favourite things this season, probably the two that stick out for me in terms of sort of niche things that I've loved, was I think he came on against Sheffield United and there's a tackle that he made out on the right-hand side where the guy someone is passed to on the touchline, but Palmer, who's quite a distance away, reads that it's a touch short and is able to, literally in one move, he chases the ball down, shapes his body so that he received it instead of the other player, but in doing so, uses his momentum to back into the player and shove him miles off the pitch, and then doesn't control the ball. He just plays it first time. It's simultaneously one of the most aggressive and elegant things I've ever seen, because the guy went flying over the hoardings, and he just literally, the only touch that he was to play it to someone else, and it was like a successful 10-yard pass. You just think, my God, the speed at which your mind must move to be able to, he was like, right, I can not only pick up a loose ball here, but I can deck a player and play a pass all in one foul swoop. Then the other thing is, I can't remember who it's against. There's one lofted pass over a defence that plays Jamie Allen in against someone recently. Oh no, it's a no-look chipped pass over the top of a defence.
You love that, didn't you?
My God. Was just there's all them awful internet people that are like, the streets won't forget, sort of whatever. But that really was a moment where you were like, oh, fucking behave yourself. Like, what are people meant to do about that? All he did was he just sort of let the ball roll over his foot while he was running in a different direction. And it rolled, because I don't know if you've played five-a-side and have ever been like, well, I can't get through here, but I bet I can loft this over the... You're like, well, no. Because what are they going to do? Head it down? Or check? No. But his was so precise that Alan was like, I just don't think you could have ever expected that would have come to you in a position where you could have hit it. And he was just like, how did I think you were going to do that?
And it's more and more, though, isn't it? That's what I think is great about it. As he's getting more confident, these little things are happening more and more. These little flicks that are coming off. And even the goal that he scored. So the one thing I've noticed that he's not quick of mind is just, and maybe it's just an illusion, is actually shooting. When he's finally he stood in front of the goal and he's like, oh, please finish it. And you just have to wait till he's ready to have a shot. And then he did finish it. But he just, these little flicks around the corner, the shot the other day where he kind of, was he fouled or was he, there was a save or something. He got through on goal and he was basically about to score and then there was a little bit of a save. But just the deftest of touch of foot. It's just, that to me is a sign of somebody who's starting to get a real feel for it again. So maybe he is. Maybe it was just working with Pearson, which I can imagine would be just horrible for everybody.
Awful.
So I mean, Pearson and Palmer are just not going to be your next duo, are they? So.
But
He was even good at Norwich. Norwich was the absolute nadir of this season. It was so awful.
Oh yeah.
But he came on
pretty much.
and he actually looked as if he had some vague idea of how to play football, which none of the others did. He had some pretty decent ideas in terms of attack, and looked fairly hefty in defence, which no one else did. Everyone looked lightweight that day. But I think he's really come on, and hopefully there's more to be seen from him in the next half of the season.
You'd hope as well that this is a really significant. This break, you feel like is going to affect different clubs and different players and stuff in different ways. And you'd imagine that actually we're going to be one of the teams that really falls foul of it, because we don't want the season to break now, do we? We just want to keep going. But actually, Palmer probably does, with the last 3 years of injuries that he's had, and with the way that they've really delicately managed him through this, and with how broken up his pre-season was because of blisters and whatever it was that he was struggling with, you wonder whether actually he might be a real beneficiary of this break, because that will facilitate his sort of recuperation. Yeah, that's that. The final thing I'll say on Palmer is that I never want Palmer. I want brutalist, joyless football, don't I? I'm not interested in kind of fancy, enjoyment like that. But he's the one player like that I think I've ever seen that is able to be kind of, none of it seems for no reason.
Yeah, that's a perfect way of putting it. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's
got a method, yeah.
As flashy as it is, everything is just a pass to a teammate, or a kind of. I haven't seen a great deal, apart from Bristol City, where you feel like he was trying to be like he'd put a nice dress on to show an ex-boyfriend what he's missing. That he really sort of tried to fruitlessly turn it on a little bit. But against everybody else, it's kind of like it's not flashy. It's like because that's the way that I'll sort of either get the ball to where I need it to be. And so he's kind of he's like really captured my heart in a way that a player like that I didn't think was going to. Can we talk about wing backs?
Yes.
Go on then.
I have some thoughts.
Go on, Neil.
I think it's the one area where we are not as good as we could be. It's also the area where I think if we were to improve on it, we would be unstoppable. Like I just think sustainability-wise, Eccles probably, as much as I think he's really starting to get used to playing football in the first team, I don't think he's the long-term solution at the right back. I just think there's a naturalism which should come on the wings, and Darbo for me, and just that kind of player is what I want there. And left-hand side, it's Bidwell is another example of somebody who is functionally doing everything he needs to do, and actually he's really stepped up his performance level in terms of knowing that he has to do a job for the team, and he's always in the right places and stuff. Again, it's just not a natural fit for him, I think, when everything else that's going on around him doesn't seem quite, he's not able to kind of interact on the same level as everybody else, and it's quite stark, certainly from an attacking perspective, those two areas where I just feel if we're able to step up to another kind of level. I mean, I look back to sort of the Maatsen and Darbo combo where they were both playing at their best, linking in with everybody when we were doing Fulham and all that sort of stuff. It was just, I think that's the piece of the jigsaw which I really think if we can improve upon, we should. That's not to say it will fix it, because there's also then a question about the fact that we're so defensively sound. Maybe some of that's to do with the fact that Bidwell is on the left-hand side and he's bringing better cover than we might have had before. But it's just in the attacking areas, it's just something a little bit, it goes awry in those places a little bit more often than I would hope for. But that seems like a major criticism as I've kind of wrapped it up. But I don't mean it to be, because I think they're still doing a job that we need them to do. But if we're being greedy and if we actually want to do something this season based on the platform that we're giving ourselves, they're the areas, I reckon.
So I think that's why I was asking the question, was ultimately to see whether you agreed with me, and then in doing so made you right. So congratulations for passing that particular test. But the thing is that I think what you need is, I don't think it's a case of replacing Bidwell. What you need is Bidwell to play against QPR, and then you need Maatsen to play against Wigan at home. Because I thought Wigan at home did a really good job on us up until they were unlucky enough to concede that deflected goal. And the thing that was crying out was they just narrowed the pitch and invited us to give the ball to Bidwell and Eccles.
Yeah, they're loving it, weren't they? Yeah.
You were like, actually, this is where Ian Maatsen would have a really, really good time. And
yeah.
I just think that we're almost going to fall victim of our own success in the second half of the season, because we're now the form team going into it. There'll be enough time that people will be able to sort of reset and do their homework against the opposition. And now teams will go, oh, they're quite dangerous, actually. They've got that big boy up front and whatever. And I think then naturally teams will sit further back against us. And I think that's the last thing that we want, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we've really loved... I thought QPR were perfectly fine, apart from the fact that it was very odd how they loved giving us the ball back. But the thing was that they kept giving us the ball back in areas where we were able to hurt them. Whereas if they had just done what Wigan did and just said, come on then, what are you going to do? I'm not sure we're terribly well cut out to deal with that. Does that make sense? And I think that's where the wing backs come in. Is I think if we'd got a bit more strength there, but luckily we'll have the funds to do that. One, because of local businessman Doug King now, who's going to throw presumably a war chest at the club. But secondly, from when we sell Gyökeres and Hamer for a combined, 60 million?
Yeah.
And we've got no debts to pay off anymore. So it can only go on cold hard players.
So the whole thing is going to go on a player, right? Or two?
Yeah.
One great player.
Yeah.
While we're talking about areas for improvement, do we need a new keeper?
No. I mean, I can put my hands up, and I always, and there's another one, I always thought that Moore would eventually get it back in. I thought Wilson is perfectly able and capable. It's got a second keeper who just wasn't really sustainable, because I like my keeper to be Mr. Dominant, but you can't argue with this run of games. It's like Reece Charles Cook and more in terms of what he's done, and he's saving stuff. He had a couple of wonky games where he was making kind of interesting decisions, but you've got those two keepers. They're both perfectly good championship keepers. We're actually quite lucky, because if one's not available, I don't have a problem with Moore coming back in. He had a crisis of confidence for a couple of games early in the season, but all last season he was pretty darn good. So unless he's just broken now forever, which seems unlikely, I'm pretty sure if he came back in, he'd be good as well. So no change for me. Thank you, Joey.
Yeah, and Wilson didn't really have anything to do at QPR apart from make an absolutely blinding save towards the end, which I thought was pretty impressive that he kept his concentration till then. I don't have any issue with him. He'll be thrilled to know.
It was QPR where at the end of the game is their keeper makes that incredible point blank save to deny Gyökeres the hat-trick, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think. Am I overstating how good that save is? I watched that save back a lot of times. I think that's about as good a save as I've ever seen.
You know what it is? It's football thing for if it's right at you, people don't really care too much. And it wasn't right at him, it was right above him. He had to get his arm up and everything. But I think see the ones where they go out to the side and they're like, they're the better ones.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think right at you means that if you didn't move, it doesn't go in because it hits you and stays out.
In the face, yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. But Gyökeres is about a yard away from goal and he's massive. Yep. He's really big, right? And he's moving at speed. And I did a physics GCSE that I don't think I did very well in, but I mean, you won't be able to see me if you're listening at home. But it was a bit like this, right?
I mean, that's explained audibly as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
everyone knows.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
And it was, you hit the ball really fast. That guy had to put his arm up exceptionally quickly, and it had to be strong enough that it didn't just go behind him like that. And I would say that qualifies that as one of the best saves that I've ever seen.
I need to look at it again. I agree with all the noises and the motions and the fact and how you've explained it, because that sounds like you shouldn't be able to save a shot like that.
Yeah.
Well, and this is the thing.
Great.
Yeah.
It was a great save. I had no doubt in it at all. Definitely a great save.
But it was just so frustrating that he aimed it straight at the keeper when he had a massive goal in front of him. He could have gone anywhere.
It could have been. Because if it's even a yard either side, is that he's
oh, well fucking done. You saved it. You shouldn't even have been there.
Yeah, true. But then this is the beauty of Gyökeres, isn't it? Is that ultimately, like, the most surprised I've been about with Gyökeres this season was the tap-in that he scored really recently. You were like, it's the first against QPR where it goes into the top corner. Is that as soon as he hit that, I was like, oh, there's no way that's going. This is not what you do. Yeah. You don't score that goal. You're not waiting for a ball to roll to you that you could just tap in. You're either going to score a 25-yard fucking like slot it into the bottom corner, or this is going to roll to you and just going to completely air kick it. But you saw Alan do it, thank God, first, and he was like, no, it's not that, is it? Talking about that opposition keeper, I wonder whether there's a very small section here, because I know that this isn't what we do, for opposition players that have stood out. Has there been anyone that you've saw and gone, I don't mind a bit of that?
Yeah, I think you mentioned him when we did the pod, but at Sheffield United, just in terms of his play, just how he controlled his own match when everything else was a little bit chaotic around him. It was just, you get players, and who was it? It was like Ayew for whoever it was the other season where he played against us, and there's just a quality level where the easy things are easy, so they don't have to think, and then the hard things are easy as well. And you're just like, okay, you're no wonder you're about to play in the World Cup. You've got some real quality there. So he was the one who I looked at and I was just like, even our own good players, he seemed better than them, and I always think they're the best. And he was a step above. Everything was just lovely for him.
He was doing stuff where like it was like in a cartoon football match, where like he would do something and then two players would like run into each other and their arms would go like, you know what I mean? Like it was a sort of slapstick type thing where you were like, you've made them look a bit daft actually, haven't you? He was. I'm not massive for noticing opposition players, but with him, you were like, you're really good, aren't you? Like, I don't know where you come from. Your man who scored a hat-trick against us for Hull, Estupinian?
No. Banned, not allowed, no.
No?
No way.
I thought last season that Willock was incredible. He was last season. He was the player that stood out the most. But this season, I don't know. I think he's coming back from injury or illness, but he didn't look quite as impressive. But he had a few touches where I thought, oh, that's very good.
Yeah, and it's recency bias, I guess. But Elias Chair is good as well, isn't he?
Oh, I love him. Oh, he's so good. Every time he plays against us, he's just one of those small players, and the small ones often are the best because you've got to be the best if you're small. And yeah, he's really good. I still maintain Jason Kumas is the best player I ever saw play against us, and that was only because I saw him take the best corner ever. And from that point onwards, I was just like, we have to buy this player. He's just too good. Never happened in the end, but it was he's still on my list.
He's probably ultimately was a bit. He seems the sort of player that we would have signed, but ultimately was probably a bit too good, wasn't he?
Possibly that was the sticking point. Yeah.
Who, out of interest, while we're here, is there anyone else that you can think of? Who, when you think ever, who would have liked the best individual performances you can think of ever that you've seen against Carv?
Ali Benabia for Man City against us.
Man City, really?
Yeah, he looked very good against us. And also, I went to, we played Spurs away in the FA Cup, and Bale on that day just looked.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking, was he playing? Somebody.
Yeah, he did play that game.
Just looked the strongest player ever. We got absolutely battered that day for just physicality, but there were just some players on the pitch, and I think I've conflated memories now, so I want to say Bale, but I don't know if it was him. But they just made all of our players look absolutely piss weak. It was just a really stark day for me. That was.
There's always Shearer for me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Shearer. He always seemed to. I mean, he was.
He's
quite good, but he was always really good against us.
I've heard Alan Shearer say in the past that if he was ever going on a lean spell, one of the first things he would do is to see how soon it was that he would be playing us again.
Oh, that don't make me feel good.
In terms of physical strength, I don't think he was amazing the whole game. Do you remember the goal that Didier Drogba scored, not only just against us, but very specifically against Scott Dan in the FA Cup quarter-final?
Oh, the FA Cup. That was another day.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've ever seen
a lesson.
Only time I've ever seen a footballer dunk on another footballer.
Yes.
Scott Dan just wasn't ready for Didier Drogba's strength that morning. He was just like, okay, see what you're doing here.
Those games were mad, weren't they? There's always two types of games where we play as the underdog. We either play like we did against Man United, where we raise it to a level where we can compete. And I thought Southampton last year was kind of that thing where we're just as good as them. And then you get another time where you just get absolutely dicked. And it doesn't necessarily have to be against a team that's hugely superior to you. That Spurs games was one. I also remember a couple of years ago Watford in the League Cup or something, and you're playing against them, and you just think these are full blown men compared to us. They're just you can't compete with that sort of nonsense. It's not fair.
Yeah, true. Right, lovely. Okay, so we've covered the. Can you call it a takeover? I suppose it's a takeover, isn't it? We've covered, what have we missed from this season that we haven't talked about so far? I guess we haven't talked about Pitchgate, have we? But it all seems a bit immaterial now, doesn't it?
Yeah, we sacked that off early on, didn't we? We sort of said, it's happened.
It's happened, and also kind of in the grand scheme of things now, it hasn't really had much of an effect on us.
Good thing in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of, it obviously did. Potentially we'd be top by now if it wasn't Pitchgate. But I think, irrespective of Pitchgate, if you'd have said to us, you go into this point of the season where you're only sort of games in hand away from being in the playoffs, you'd probably been like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so, Dom Hyam going? We talked about it, I suppose, haven't we? We talked about it when it happened.
Yeah, we did. And they're loving him. No surprise. He's an excellent player, and you still want him to be there. But I think the one thing that's happened for us, at least, is it's given all of our defenders an opportunity to kind of play and mix it up. And even the one like Doyle, who's on loan from Man City, so they'll probably yank him back if he doesn't play enough. He's played plenty of games, and you mentioned the other day, Joey, about we don't seem to have this kind of single defence which has been seen through all of the clean sheets. We're actually finding a way to get these clean sheets whilst kind of rotating and switching things up, and they're all coming in and doing a job. So it's somehow would have that time. How much better can we be?
Yeah. What a weird thought. How much better can we be?
It's obscene. It really is.
Maybe that's a good place to leave that then, because that's a nice sentiment, isn't it?
Can we snap that? I thought that was quite good, and even my intonation was wonderful. I might keep that one for the posts. Beautiful.
Anything else then, or shall we treat these good people to the sort of, I don't know, whatever this.
I'll do our research on a local businessman. Yeah.
Okay. All good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Lovely then. Right. Okay. Well, Imogen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joey.
Neil, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
And we will see you on the other side of the World Cup, I expect. Thank you for listening, and bye.